Hi all. So the topic for today is uses, functions and purpose of future perfect continuous tense, also called as future perfect progressive tense. When and where and how should we use future perfect continuous tense in sentences? So the link for the uses and functions of all the four forms of present tense, all the four forms of past tense, the first three forms of future tense would be given in the description box. You may just check it out, okay? Now, this session on the uses and functions of future perfect continuous, it would not be very lengthy or very prolonged and extensive like my other sessions of tenses which went on for 30 to 35 and 40 minutes. It's because this tense is the least used tense in English communication. But let me remind you, the structure and function of this tense is complex and a bit complicated to understand. So I'll give you 5 important points which you need to keep in mind. Overall, there are 2 rules and 4 examples, but each of those rules and examples would be based on these 5 important points. So before we proceed with the uses and functions of this tense, we will just brush up with the structure or the formula or the construction of a sentence in future perfect continuous tense. Okay, first comes the subject, followed by will or shall. Next is have, then been, then V4. V4 is present participle of the verb ing, and then comes the object. We use one from will or shall. Where should we put to use will or shall has been explained in previous other sessions of future tenses. Shall is mostly used with first person pronouns. Will is used with all the other pronouns, but that's an outdated rule in grammar. Nowadays, most of us prefer using will in place of shall. Next is have. We don't use has in future perfect continuous tense or anywhere in future tense. Has is not used. Okay. Next is been, followed by ing, the ing form of the verb, and then object. So let's look at the example. He is the subject, will have been eating the food. So this is the subject, this is the verb, and the food constitutes the object. He will have been eating the food. Now let's proceed on to the 5 important points of future perfect continuous tense. These are the main or key important points of future perfect continuous tense which you need to keep in mind. The first point is go to the future and look back at the past. Okay, so when and where is future perfect continuous tense used? It is used to go to the future and then looking back at the past. Okay, imagine that you are walking to the future and then you are looking back at the past. That is the main feature of future perfect continuous tense. You are looking at the past from a point in the future. Okay, you'll understand it better when we solve the examples. Second point is mostly it is used with time expressions. Now, what are time expressions? By 3 p.m., by the end of summer, by Sunday, all these are time expressions. So future perfect continuous tense, you can see them mostly with time expressions. The third point is, it is currently unfinished, but will be finished at a future time. So the examples and sentences, whatever in future perfect continuous tense, they at present they will not be finished or completed, but that action will be finished at a future time. Now, next is duration of time is important in almost all continuous tenses, whether it is present continuous or past or whether it belongs to future. Duration is important. Whenever there is continuous means ing, duration, extension of time, passage of time, stretch of time, length of time is important in continuous tense. Last point is, there is progression of time. Progress means there is a continuity, continuous. Okay, so there is a progression of time because the name itself suggests continuous tense or progressive tense. So obviously there will be a progression of time. Progression, duration, length of time is the extension of time. So rule number 1 says future perfect continuous can measure the time or show duration. Measure the time itself means duration. Measure the time means to show the extension of time, stretch of time, passage of time. Example 1, by 3 p.m. they will have been studying for 4 hours. Now, let me take you back to those 5 important points which I mentioned few minutes back. What was the first point? You are going to the future and then you are looking back at the past. So that point is fulfilled in this example. 3 p.m. has not yet come now. It has not arrived. But you are going to 3 p.m. which is in the future, and then you are looking back at the past, and then you are commenting that they will finish studying for almost 4 hours when it is 3 p.m. When the clock strikes 3 p.m., they will have finished studying for 4 hours. Okay, so you are going forward in future and commenting on the past. Now, what was the second important point I mentioned? You use time expression in future perfect continuous. So that point is also getting fulfilled here. By 3 p.m. is a time expression. What was the third important point? Do you remember? Currently the action is unfinished, but the action will get finished at a specific point in the future. So currently they have not finished studying for 4 hours. It has not happened right now, but it will happen at a later point of time in the future. And what is that later point of time in the future? 3 p.m. Now, what was the fourth important point I mentioned? Duration is important. So how is the duration specified? They will have been studying. Will have been studying shows the importance, emphasis on time, on the duration of time. What was the fifth important point I mentioned? There is progression of time. How do we know that time is progressing? There is ing form in the sentence. They will have been studying. So will have been studying shows there is continuity, there is progress of time. So I hope future perfect continuous tense, the first example is clear. Moving on to the second example. By next July, I have been living in Pune for 5 years. Underline the verb. Will have been living. So do you remember the first point? going forward in future, looking back at the past. So you are going to the future July, and then you are making a remark or the comment that yes, you will be completing 5 years in Pune. Now, what was the second important point? Time expression. So, by next July is a time expression. What was the third important point? Currently, it is unfinished, but yes, it will get finished at a later point in future. So, July has not yet arrived. It lies ahead in time. It is about to come. And here also duration and progression of time is getting fulfilled. Okay, so I hope it's clear. Let's see this example. By 3 p.m. they will have been studying for 4 hours. It means that they would have started studying before 3 p.m. and it's possible that they will continue studying after 3 p.m. also. So that also shows there is a progression of time. There is no end of progressive activity in these examples, but we see a contradiction in the next rule. Rule number 2, future perfect continuous tense can also be used to show the end of progressive activity, which is contrary to rule number 1. In rule number 1, we saw that there is progress, there is continuity in the action. We can measure the time or the duration. But here, it says that we can use this tense also to show the end of some activity or an event. Look at the first example, how the situation is changing by the time he retires. So here the time expression specifies that there is a stop, there is an end of an activity. By the time he retires, he will have been working for 40 years. May I take you to my previous example of rule number 1, and that is by 3 p.m. I will have been studying for 4 hours. That means I can study even after 3 p.m. The action goes on. But here he is letting me realize that when he retires, he will stop working. And overall, he would have worked for 40 years. By the time he retires, he will have been working for 40 years. There is an end of that activity. So when he retires, he will not be working. He will finish working. Now coming to the second example, by the time we finish studying, again this time expression shows that there is a pause, there is a stop, and there is an end of progressive activity, unlike the previous examples of rule number 1. We will have been studying for 2 hours. Will have been studying for 2 hours. So here the speaker tries to say that when we finish studying, it's over, it's completed, and the overall time taken for studies would be 2 hours. Here it says we will stop studying when we finish studying. And here it says the person will stop working once he gets retired or once he retires. But in previous rule, we saw that there is a progression in time, and here we saw that future perfect continuous tense can also be used to show the end of an activity in progress. So I hope you understood these examples. Next rule is future perfect continuous can also be used to show an action that is the cause of another action in the future. One action will be the reason why another action occurs, and the time is in future tense. Example, by 3 p.m. She will be tired because she will have been working constantly. So the emphasis is on will have been working. I need to show how much dedicated or committed or struggling she is. So I have used she will have been working constantly. What is the reason for her to get tired? Because she will have been working constantly. One action is the reason why another action is happening. So, what is the reason for her exhaustion? What is the reason for her tiredness? Because she will have been constantly working. Next is by 2025, she will be all over well known because she will have been working daily. She will have been playing, she'll have been cooking, she'll have been teaching. So by 2025, she'll be well known because the emphasis is again on the duration of time, because only duration of time can show the impact and the punch on the dedication or commitment she is doing. That's it all for today. For more grammar videos, vocabulary, homophones, synonyms, advanced English phrases and error rectification, like, share, subscribe. Stay tuned, stay updated, stay healthy.